Hi, I'm. It's like I don't think I can do this. We kind of over the years assembled 15 rules that help to guide us. Now I have to say they're only our rules, but they do apply to anybody who's attempting to do this kind of spoof. All these people, when they try to imitate our style, probably less successful because they are not aware of the rules, the 15 rules. Jim Abrams is probably looking down at me and saying, "Oh God, is David trying to take himself seriously?" No, I'm not. And it's none of your business. Who the hell's outside the door? Oh, it's the food.
Standing outside.
I'm getting hungry.
Hello and welcome. Welcome back to the channel. And today is a very special episode where I'm going to speak to David Zucker, who is right here beside me, as you can see. David, welcome to the channel. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
I'm glad. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad this is very special because I know the rest of your episodes are not special, but evidently this is.
Yeah, this is the only special one.
Right.
I've
Yeah.
saved
I'm
it.
honored to be the special one. Yes.
And that's no offense to anybody else I've interviewed, obviously.
No, they were just
No.
mediocre though. But no offense to them. Yeah.
No, none whatsoever. And
Okay. Now I've set the bar
you're-
high. I better be good. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason you get the bigger box and I get the little box.
Okay.
You know.
But you can learn it
So-
from Master Crash. But we'll get into that.
Yes. Oh, we'll definitely get into Master Crash because yourself and your brother and Jim Abrahams are responsible for me wanting to write and also for me wanting to show everybody I ever met Airplane. And now you've created a way for others to follow in your footsteps with your course, Master Crash. What would be your overview of Master Crash for someone who is like, I want to follow in the footsteps of David Zucker?
Well, I think there's a lot of people who admire the work that we've done and want to follow in our footsteps, even pros, people who have been very successful, but they've been successful at either sitcom or other kinds of movies or something, but they don't know how to do spoof. And I mean, the example I give is Naked Gun 4. And very well-meaning people, but they didn't know how to do it. And so I really was motivated to do Master Crash because people just think it's easy. You can't just think it's great and admire it and then think you can do it.
Yeah, that would be in lots of other fields. That would be insane, wouldn't it? It'd be like brain surgery. I'll give it a crack, you know.
Yeah,
but,
it looks easy. Yeah, guys doing stuff, and yeah.
What always struck me was the sheer range of jokes. So, for example, when I first watched Kentucky Fried Movie, we've got the courtroom scene. There's the phrases being taken literally. Your physical gags in Naked Gun and Airplane, but there's that rhythm and wordplay. Is there like a formula of type of joke to use and when to use it, or is that the link to Master Crash? Is it something like there is a hard and fast formula, or is it a little bit more organic than that?
There isn't a hard and fast formula. I mean, it's always shifting. It shifts from year to year. What's funny one year may not be funny the next year, and you can't go back and copy what was done 30 years ago. And so that's my main problem with Seth MacFarlane's Naked Gun 4. They're going back and they love Naked Gun so much. They're very well-meaning. And they thought, well, if we do this, we just replace Leslie Nielsen and put, Liam Neeson in it with the same initials, I guess. And he's another old guy, but that was something that worked in the 80s, but it's old now. And just doing those dumb puns, all that stuff. So what I want to teach in Master Crash is, there's certain rules, and one of my main overall lessons is be original. Don't try to if all you can do is copy, don't even try. And that's and you can see it in Naked Gun 4. I have not seen it, but I'm just bitter about it.
Well, I have seen it. I have seen it. I mean, it's irrelevant to a certain degree, other than just a paying customer. What I think about it. One of the things that surprised me was about it was something that I very rarely, if ever, saw in any of yours, which is reactions to people saying stupid things, because you've got to sell that it isn't, and that's where the humor lies. And there's a few moments in the film where people are like, "Oh, well, I'll have to explain what this person said." I'm like, "Well, no, you don't."
Yeah,
That's the
you
joke.
can't do that, and it's one of our rules. I don't know what the number of. I don't know the numbers of any of the rules, but one of the rules is acknowledgement. And sometimes you can do a reaction, sometimes you don't. But I've learned over 50 years how to do this, and I've also and I learned from my mistakes. I never learned a lesson from any of the hits that I've done, but from the failures, I learned it. And one of the lessons I teach, it's not one of the rules. It's just, don't blame other people. It's, investigate. You can't blame the studio for their ad campaign. If a movie's good, it'll find its audience. But that's just one of the things. But I've accumulated so much, and as I think I mentioned this before, I went to speak to my son's college film class, and I love teaching the students. Their questions are great. I love to answer any question, but I found that the professors didn't know anything, so they're teaching it. But and I don't blame them. If you haven't really done it, you can't teach it. So so that's what I want to do. And look, Seth MacFarlane on Naked Gun 4, he hadn't done it before. He did Family Guy, big success, and Ted, huge success, but it's not Spoof. So,
and
so there.
and it's interesting that you were saying about that, making mistakes and learning from them, and the only way you can kind of refine the process is by doing it. And it kind of takes me into my next question, really, which is, in terms of comedy, I think of it like any other art, and I know some people don't, even though it's ridiculously hard to get right, probably harder than any other type of writing, really. But Andy Warhol said that like art is getting away with it. Do you think comedy is in the same way? Like, as long as it's funny, you can get away with it. As long as it's good, it doesn't matter about cultural pushback and what audiences will and won't accept. Just
Right.
if it's funny, it'll work.
If the audience laughs, then you've succeeded. But that doesn't mean you have a good movie. So there's more to it than just the jokes. So another thing that Jerry and Jim and I learned is that filling a movie with 80 minutes of jokes doesn't mean you have a hit. There's more that goes into it, and I'm teaching that you need a story and you need a character arc of your hero. So your hero has to have a problem in the first act, and he's got to deal with it and solve it in the second act, and then execute it in the third act. So my brother used to say, the first act, you get your hero up a tree. In the second act, you throw stones at him, and in the third act, you get him down. So, and it doesn't matter how many jokes you have. If you don't have that character development, which we learned by our mistakes, then the movie will fail.
Do you think that sometimes having a template of something like, say, for example, like 0 Hour or something like that, where you've got the basic storyline, but you can sort of play, you can be kind of devilish with it and silly with it and twist and turn it, but still keep to that structure, it is one of the magic ingredients that you kind of added to comedy, which is that idea of we will get lots and lots of jokes in there, but the story will still stay, recognizable, and the audience will stay with the story as well.
It was a tremendous good fortune that we found Zero Hour, and we never have found a movie since then. Well, we may have in the script that I have now called The Star of Malta, a film noir. And we used a movie called Detour for our Zero Hour. And, but that was, Zero Hour I'd say it's a great fortunate occurrence because it had the complete plot, start to finish. And we put in the jokes. And then when we landed at Paramount, which was then a great studio, it may be again once they fire all the current management, but the Paramount of Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg and Barry Diller took the script. They assigned a story guy to us, one of their executives, and the studio actually made the movie better. So, and we didn't even realize what we were doing at the time. We were great joke guys, but we had a lot to learn about story, and we did what this executive suggested, and I don't think we realized at the time how much that made the movie a success. It turned out we were pretty good directors and we were great joke writers, and then we had this great story written by Arthur Haley, who wrote that. And then for Naked Gun, for the first Naked Gun, we used a number of movies. It was a Charles Bronson movie called Telephone, and Day of the Jackal, and a couple of other movies that we kind of cobbled together into a plot, and that worked great. And then for this movie, the movie I'm working on now, we have, as I said, we have Detour, and that movie is only really had a first and second act. It never had a third act, and it ended rather abruptly, if you're familiar with it. And I think maybe because they ran out of money. That's what it seemed. But also the Hayes office at the time, and this was 1945, dictated that if you commit a wrong thing, you must pay a price. So they have the hero be caught and captured. So, and it was very unsatisfying ending. And I learned that that's all the audience cares about is, did we win? Did we win? And there was I'm a big fan of of American football, the NFL, and my Green Bay Packers, which were from Wisconsin. And during the Vince Lombardi era, they probably won about 5 championships. And Alex Karras, who was from the rival Detroit Lions, he wrote a book where he mentioned the Packers. He said the whole game they were beating the Packers, beating the crap out of them all up and down the field. But then when they looked up at the scoreboard at the end of the game, oh my God, we lost. So that's what I think when I think about Top Secret. I think about, well, we're just going great all the time. But we didn't give, it was our fault. We didn't give Val that character. And these are the kind of things that I can teach. My dad once said, I never learned a lesson that didn't cost me money. And so this is what I can teach. It's like, it's not that we're geniuses, just we've kind of learned from our mistakes.
Yeah, there is literally no substitute for experience when it comes to kind of incrementally improving something. And it's funny, speaking about like how much I love your films and how great they all are, but I was just thinking, I was saying about Zero Hour and films like that, and I'm not wanting to I know how hard it is to make a movie, but were you a kind of group of friends who would sit and watch a film and be really happy when a bad one was on because you could riff through it and add bits to it and make fun of it as you would do it? Would you all sit there and kind of almost play to the gallery when you were watching bad films, but it's a bad one,
Exactly. We talk about this in our book about the whole airplane, making of Airplane, which is called Surely You Can't Be Serious, the true story of
Oh, it's a
Airplane.
great book.
And we would do exactly that. We'd sit around. We loved B movies, uh, or bad movies, or even A-list movies like the airport movies, which were cheesy, and I think we enjoyed that. And the actors in them were B movie actors. And it's one of the mistakes of Naked Gun 4 that they cast Liam Neeson. First of all, as I said, I wouldn't have tried to replace Leslie Nielsen. It's not Liam's fault. He is such a fine actor that I think he either won an Oscar or was nominated, and brilliant actor. Even in the Taken movies, he's so good, and he cannot be described as a B-list actor. And in Spoof, that's what you need. And so that's just one of the lessons that we teach. Yeah.
That is interesting. And to kind of go back into education a little bit and talk about how I guess having that kind of structure to go off, whether it's somebody's guidance or whether it is, looking at another film and deconstructing it. At university, I mentioned to you before we were recording that I was kind of steered away from comedy. And apart from very, very basic sitcom structure in my screenwriting class, we were told to focus on movement and getting to different places very quickly and formula, get rid of the dialogue. Why do you think comedy isn't valued sometimes in film schools in the way, even though it's arguably harder to do? Is that the same in the US, or is that
I think it is.
Maybe
I don't. The professors don't teach it, like what I was saying about, going to my son's film class. They don't really know about comedy. They have their favorite comedies, and so the professors don't really know how to do it. It's the hardest thing to do, because you can actually get away with some bad drama and leave the theater without being embarrassed. But if you flop at comedy, it's just so apparent. If you don't get laughs, if it's silent, it's just, there's nowhere to hide.
That's a very good point.
That's just and about it not being valued. I'm not in this to get awards. We were very inspired by Woody Allen and when he did comedies, and in Annie Hall, which is a brilliant movie. And not only a comedy, but it made serious points. Woody Allen, his character was saying awards. Why is Hollywood so obsessed with awards? Greatest fascist dictator, Adolf Hitler. And, so I kind of think of it that way, these awards, although I think the Academy is great, and it's good to congratulate good work and art. I mean,
yes.
My favorite movie of all time, it's not a comedy, it's The Godfather 1 and 2. Just they'll never be, well, you can't say never, but those are just brilliant movies. And in comedy, Tootsie, I admire Sidney Pollack so much, although that's not spoof. And Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, not a spoof, but these are brilliant movies. And I don't know if Groundhog Day was valued by the Academy, but I don't care. It's fine. It's all right to get an award. If I ever get an award, I'd be the most surprised person in the room. But I don't need it. And I love being in the Academy and getting all the screeners so I can see every movie in my house.
Yeah, totally. And I think that to go along with what you were saying about, about people maybe awards and things, I always think it's funny, there's been so many great horror films and so many great comedy films that don't get nominated, and you think, okay, but I couldn't name a better film that came out that year than that film that pops into my head. And it's strange, because obviously crying and being afraid is a guttural reaction, and laughing is a very guttural, intense reaction, and they're the really hard things to kind of create in another human being. And like you say, I suppose stand-up comedy being a pure form that most people would not want to try, because if it dies and the joke doesn't go down well, it's awful. It must just be a horrendous feeling. you can't. There's no hiding place with comedy, is there?
Well, great stand-ups can survive any of that. They can,
Mm.
I don't think Robin Williams always scored 100%, but it didn't matter. His
Yeah, his
pace was
energy.
there. And, Seinfeld is a great stand-up comic. These guys, and they can also handle hecklers. And that's something that, I've never done that. And I don't want to do stand-up. I don't think I could. And I also, everybody says, when they hear about my house and what goes on in my house, they say, oh, that's got to be a reality show, sitcom, everything. I said, right. And I could probably do 3 good episodes, but then I watch Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm,
Yeah,
and
wow.
and those guys are just masters at what they do. And you can't, I could never do that, and I don't need to do it. That's
Mm.
Seinfeld, Larry David. They're geniuses at what they do. But I'm happy that I can do what I do. If I can ever raise the money to do another movie, and it looks like I am, so I'm happy with that.
Oh, I can't wait for that. And it's actually as you were saying then about TV comedies and films, I was thinking about Police Squad, and it did become a big hit, but as a movie. And
Yes.
I love Police Squad arguably more than I love the Naked Gun. Like I'm always quoting, roses are red, violets are blue, I'll break your face, and the little quotes that pop up, and the keys where he's making the keys, all of the little moments in it. But audiences really have to focus on those things, don't they? And when you're in a cinema, in your cinema seat, you do focus. Maybe when you're watching on television, you don't. Is that something that
Well,
played
that's
into the difference?
absolutely, you're right on target. We were asked about it at the time, and we realized that as good as Police Squad was, there were 6 little half-hour movies, and the way people watch TV is way different than the way they watch movies. So in movies, at least at that time, you were sitting in rows facing forward. There were no phones, and it was a big screen. You could see the little details in the background that we would put in. And the other thing is that we had a year to write a script, and we still do when we write our movies. We have plenty of time to perfect and hone and fine tune a 108-page script. And in television, it comes Thursday night. You gotta, whatever you got at the time, it's got to be good enough. So we could not have sustained Police Squad. And in addition to it's not really being right for television. But and at the time, it was the head of ABC got us into for a meeting and kind of begged us to put a laugh track in, and we actually felt
Tell people.
bad for him that he was saddled with this show that you couldn't have a laugh track on Police Squad because it's not supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be serious.
Exactly.
The laugh track for our movies is the live theater audience.
Yeah. Do you know, over here it was released in video shops, 2 episodes on a tape, and I would get them out for the video shop. So I didn't realize for quite a long time that Police Squad wasn't just another Naked Gun movie, or just the way it was presented in the rental market. For me as a kid, I was just like, oh wow, there's so many of these Naked Gun films.
Oh yeah.
So it's just strange how
But as I was
sometimes.
saying, it was a great idea for 1982, and then we did the movies in 1988, and we do the old guy, and we did puns, but time has moved on. Nobody wants to go back to that. I wrote a script for Naked Gun 4. We called it, the title was Naked Gun 4, Nordberg Did It. And I wrote it with Pat Proft and Mike McManus. And we didn't even set it, the movie, in a LA cop station. It was international spy thriller, Mission Impossible, Bond, and Bourne. And those are movies that they're still making today. So,
Yes.
unfortunately, Paramount, with their, just blinders on, had Seth MacFarlane do this, the old style Naked Gun, just copy.
Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
happens. That's I've said that's Hollywood, and so you have to overcome Hollywood, and they're so calcified, and the executives are frightened. They ask us in our Q&As, after we screen Airplane, invariably we get the question, could you make Airplane today? And I say, of course we could, just without the jokes. And we could absolutely, audiences still laugh all the way through Airplane. There's nothing like, oh, that's old fat. Nothing.
Yeah.
It's gets the same reaction or bigger than it got in 1980. But if we presented that script to a studio executive in 2025, they would say, oh no, you couldn't do the black dudes, and you couldn't do this, and you couldn't do, they're a frightened breed, because
It's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, because as you say, that there's that side of things where you're getting that kind of challenge, but then there's also the things that you said earlier on about how parody and spoofs evolve anyway. So you wouldn't
Right.
make Airplane now anyway.
When do you make the sequel to Airplane? I don't want to. And they said, well, people have come to us, we'll make a musical out of Airplane. Why? Who wants to see that? And then it's like, just because everybody's trying to make a Broadway musical doesn't mean that Airplane, because it's a big hit and it's loved and everything, doesn't mean that it's going to make a good musical. I mean, Mel Brooks made The Producers into a musical, huge success. Then they tried to make Young Frankenstein into a Broadway musical, and it wasn't. So, nobody knows anything.
Yeah, I guess there's the balance there, because there'll be people with cash symbols in their eyes about Airplane the musical straight away. You have to look at it objectively, don't you, as the holder of that
right,
film,
and we've turned it down every time. We said no, we don't get it.
Yeah,
what do they do? Sing Airplane?
Johnny would be great in it, though, wouldn't he? Johnny would be like,
yeah, if he were alive, yeah, he'd be great.
Yeah,
but then you'd have to cast that. I suppose, I don't know, but I'm not interested in it. I really want to do Star of Malta, and we've also refashioned our Naked Gun script into a movie without, doesn't have Frank Drebin or Jane or any of the characters. And we're calling it Counterintelligence, spelled with one L and a J. And eventually, maybe we'll get to make that, because it's still good and we actually know what we're doing. And but we'll need independent money, if Star of Malta is a big hit, then maybe the studio is saying, oh, maybe this guy isn't drooling in a wheelchair, which the studios obviously think. Hollywood is nothing if not completely ageist. If you're over 50, they figure your talent is gone. So interesting town we have here.
Because there's a lot of really genuinely funny people that are still genuinely funny. Larry David, for example,
right? And he's old,
yeah. And like the guy, there are people of equal greater talent who maybe have been aged out of the system. They've got all this material, they've got their scripts written, and they've got their ideas ready, and no one's willing to make them.
Interestingly enough, all the directors of my generation are really not making comedies anymore. I mean, just either they don't have any ideas, and I know what it's like not to have any ideas. I think after Airplane, we didn't have an idea. We didn't know what to do. And so we did a couple of movies while we figured out, hey, we should do Police Squad as a movie. And that was very successful. And I directed the first two, but all three were hit movies. And then after Naked Gun, I didn't have any ideas. So, Bob Weinstein came along and said, would you direct Scary Movie 3? And I said, fine. what movies are you spoofing? And he said, Signs in the Ring. And I didn't want to admit it, but I had never heard of them.
I see.
So
Right.
I said, oh, great idea. So we did those.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, was there even after you'd gone away and watched those movies? I'm kind of diverging a little bit here, but I'm really interested in that process. Were you tempted as you were directing that to kind of go, this is not going to work, or this part is not going to work, or this needs to be, kind of on the fly thinking, this is not following what I think is going to play on screen?
Well, yeah. I mean, mostly you get those problems solved in the script writing phase, but the studio would send in scenes that we had to do that I didn't agree with, but I had to direct them anyways because for the scary movies I was a hired director, and the studio sent in whole scenes we shot for a week, stuff that I didn't agree with, and I didn't think there was a training segment in the third act. It was ridiculous. Finally, the first preview for that was a disaster, and we took the movie back, and Craig Mazin, who's a brilliant writer, stitched together a fix, and we shot for 2 weeks reshoots, and we were able to put back the release of the movie a week, and it turned out to be an amazingly great movie. It's one of my 3 favorite movies that I've done.
Well, that's great that you could still have that creative control, being because I can't imagine you being like director for hire with any film and not wanting to do the absolute, not wanting it to be hilarious if it's a comedy, for example.
Right. Well, I've rarely been a director for hire. So I've always wanted to do my own material, but after BASEketball, I was looking for a movie, and fortunately Bob Weinstein called, and I was on the horse again. So, but mostly when I do the movies, I'm always confident that I have the pages. I have the 2 pages I'll need for any day of shooting, and then, but there's always opportunities when you start a scene. Like there was a funeral scene in Scary Movie 3 where we had a few jokes, and I kept adding jokes, and that was like improvising stuff. I mean, I was improvising. We don't let the actors improvise because they're all straight. But
Yes.
we added a lot of stuff. And a scene in BASEketball with Matt Stone and Trey Parker visiting the little boy in the hospital. And I kept adding jokes to that. So that's part of the fun of directing, is being able to think on your feet. And also conversely, you have to know when things aren't funny. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But I go through the checklist, which that's another thing I can teach, in the course, how to fix something. And you have to do that while the dollars are and the time is ticking away.
Yeah, there's definitely some people whose skills are almost better editors than writers. In a way, get even 0 Hour in a way is an editing project to a certain degree, making something, finding the absurdity in something that nobody else can see is such a skill. The blank page is very hard, but sometimes just having the genesis of an idea is very exciting because you can go off in a lot of different directions.
Well, that was completely exciting because we saw something in 0 Hour that evidently nobody else saw. And that was that we could do a movie without comedians. I mean, the regular conventional wisdom that, okay, you have a comedy, you get funny people and funny music and the whole thing. And we went totally against that. And we said, no, we're going to cast it with Robert Stack, Leslie Nielsen, Peter Graves, Lloyd Bridges, and also Bob Hayes and Julie Hank. Everybody was going to not play it straight, but deadly serious. And that our main direction to all the actors was play it like you don't know that you're in a comedy. And that's pretty much how everybody did it. And it worked. But at the time, it was such a foreign idea that, it was a miracle that the studio understood it. And they still wanted to cast like Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, and comedians in it, and we resisted that.
Well, that would be. I could see the fear. I'd imagine they had fear in their eyes. There's no, like you say, there's no Bill Murray, there's no Chevy Chase, and but this is a comedy you're making. That is, it's brave, and it's also not looking down on your audience, is it? Because you're going, we trust that this is funny. The audience will find it funny. We don't have to tell them that it's funny.
Well, that's a leap to say, to give the audience credit to meet you halfway. We're not, and even in the directing, and it's another thing I teach in Master Crash, is like, don't point to the joke. If you can just have it subtly in the frame, you hope the audience will see it. And if the audience does see it, it's that much more effective, because the audience feels like they're a part of it, and it's a compliment to them to give them credit for a bit of intelligence that we make the audience meet us halfway. We don't point to everything. When Leslie Nielsen is in the cabin, the passenger cabin in Airplane, and there's turbulence, and he looks up, and he said, "What the hell's going on up there?" And then, but in the lower part of the frame, there's a woman's legs in stirrups, and he's got a speculum in his hand, and he's giving this woman a pelvic, So, but we don't cut to it.
No, yeah. Oh my word. It's amazing that it can, just thinking about certain scenes can put a smile on your face, and it's interesting how people have gone sometimes in the exact opposite way. There was a glut of spoof movies in the early 2000s, but they were like this movie, that movie, this movie, that movie. But the conceit of the film seemed to be, this looks like another film. There wasn't that. I didn't quite understand. They didn't seem to learn any of the sort of.
No, they again, like Seth MacFarlane and Naked Gun 4, they didn't know what they were doing. I mean, I keep saying it looks easy. It just looks easy. Mm-hmm. And it's not enough to be a fan. The guy at my dry cleaners is a big fan of Naked Gun, but he can't do one. And it doesn't matter. It's worse if you're already a talented producer, director like Seth MacFarlane, because then you have the hubris of, I can do anything. And I mean, he did call me. They wanted me to put my name on it as executive producer, but I read the script and I knew it wasn't going to be good. And he spent the first 10 minutes just saying how much he loved my movies. And so, you can't be mad at somebody who keeps telling you what a genius you are. So, that's what. That's how I reacted.
And that's the thing as well.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is a lovely, intention. Like, if somebody was to come to me and say, you've got millions of pounds, go and make a film of one of your favorite films, it's hard to say no, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
I was thinking, because the director who was in The Lonely Island and did Hot Rod, which I think is a hilarious film, with Andy Samberg, and there was these kind of standout comedies throughout the 2000s that kind of did their own things and were very, very good. And but I was never, like, when I was showing comedies to younger people, I was showing them Airplane, I was showing them Top Secret, and I wondered if one of the, because it always surprised me how they could connect to them even though they were younger. And I was going to ask you about the not necessarily the evolution of parody, because they were of their time. These films were of their time, but like the joke density, as well as the story. We talked about how important the story is, but how do you resist pressure from people if they're saying that is a ridiculous amount of jokes? Not those jokes aren't funny, but there's just too many of them.
We never got that complaint.
Right.
The joke density came from Jerry and Jim and I had a live sketch review that we did in Los Angeles in the 70s, and it was called Kentucky Fried Theater. And when we were up on stage, we hated silence, and so we just had one joke after another. We never wanted to be on stage personally without the audience just laughing. And we found that if you can start an audience laughing, it's much easier to keep them laughing than to let everybody sit back in their seats and get quiet again. And then, you have to start them up again. And that's where the pace came. Nobody ever complained about it. None of the reviews, not the studio. They just said, but all these things that I think the studio was very concerned and worried about. First, there were 3 directors. We were first-time directors. There were no comedians, and could we do this? And so they had it in our contract that they could fire us after 3 weeks, I think, of filming. Wow. So, and we were fine with that. And the first day's dailies was the scene in the cockpit where Bob Hayes, Leslie says, "Can you fly in this plane and land it?" And Bob says, "Surely you can't be serious." And then Leslie, of course, with the famous line, "I am serious, and don't call me Shirley." And we heard back that everybody, all the executives, everybody on the lot just howled. And from then on, not only were the dailies packed for Airplane, but they had to add a second screening room because so many people wanted to see the dailies.
They wanted to see that. Yeah. I've been watching the studio recently, and one of the things that was interesting was when he arrives on set as the studio head, and they're setting up a little video village for him, or they're setting up a little and he's trying to like say something meaningful and add to it, but also like he loves being there and just loves movies. And I was thinking, oh, that's when you're making your movie, probably the last thing you want is lots of people there. But you've got the opposite problem. You want lots of people there because they're enjoying it so much.
Right. Yeah. Well, for the dailies, I watched that episode also of the studio, and I don't think I ever dealt with a studio executive who ever visited the set. I mean, Bob Weinstein did, but he was there, to be a cheerleader. I mean, he was just, nice as can be. I never had a studio executive come to visit the set and create any kind of disturbance with that. And
I was shouting at him.
They also nobody ever tried to tell us what to do, because I think, like college professors, they don't know how to do it. So they were very the studio has been very hands off in what I was doing, and I actually did know what I was doing. And it was only after I turned 51 that the studios thought that, that I was incompetent and didn't know what I was doing.
Oh man, I've only got like maybe 3 more years, and then I'm going to be
right. And believe me, I'm well past 50, but
52, I'm sure. Yeah. So to kind of go back to that idea of, the three of you, it feels like, was there an element of strength in numbers with the 3 of you? Because even if the people wouldn't give you that direction because they didn't know how to do it, but the 3 of you exuded this confidence that you made each other laugh, therefore you'll be able to make the world laugh, kind of thing.
Oh, completely. We grew up in the business together. We kind of grew up in Milwaukee together, and we drew strength and confidence from each other, and we created this thing, and and we were very self-confident. I mean, people would ask us, "What was your plan B if you don't make it in Hollywood?" When we left Milwaukee, and we thought about it. We said, we didn't have a plan B. There was no part of us that thought that we wouldn't make it. I think we just thought we had, machine guns in the Civil War.
Yeah.
And
you were
just wait till they see this. We knew Airplane would be a hit. What we didn't know was that how it would last 50 years. All these years later, the way it's regarded now is incredible. And but I think I'm very happy that that's how everything turned out.
Oh wow, yeah, definitely. I mean, the looking back and rewatching Kentucky Fried movie, and the one thing I got from it the last time I watched it was um almost a punk feel to it, where I don't know if you had any things that you deliberately didn't want to put in it, whether it was like an old time style of comedy you didn't want to have in it. So like you were saying before, like kind of all singing, all dancing, telegraphing all the jokes, kind of almost what you would have seen as old fashioned at the time. But I guess that's what a lot of great art is reacting to the things you're fed up of seeing and doing something different.
I
Was
mean,
there any styles that you just went, we're not having that in it, this has been done to
well,
death, we're going to do
definitely
something
we
different?
weren't doing the baggy pants comedian stuff. Mel Brooks played a character in his movies. He was very funny, but it just wasn't our style. And he would have
Mm.
Harvey Korman and Tim Conway uh, and Marty Fell, all these, and Gene Wilder, and they were really funny comics. But as I kind of mentioned, we thought serious movies were more funny and
Yes.
serious actors. It's just a different style. So when we did Kentucky Fried Movie, we didn't have any comics. No one, we didn't want anybody to be funny. And I think pretty much that John Landis, who directed it, understood that. And
Mm,
and John also added a lot of jokes.
right. Because it jumps around so much. There's such a variety of sketches. Bless you.
Thank you.
There's just such a variety of things in there. Whether it's the wordplay, it's like all of the other things that we see in the storylines of the later films, but it's all there. It's just such a wild ride jumping from. It's almost like watching something like a reel or something on YouTube, like a video. You're moving from one thing to the next. It it's funny how things kind of come full circle. People are kind of consuming comedy in a way that isn't a million miles away from the Kentucky Fried movie.
Right. I mean, it was sketches, and a lot of the sketches we took from our show, our stage show, and but in any sketch movie, it's tough to sustain to keep an audience interested and awake for
Yeah,
those 80 minutes that you need. And I don't know how long Kentucky Fried Movie was, but it doesn't
it's
have a
true.
plot, and that's why movies need a plot and characters, so you keep the audience awake uh,
Mm.
and interested. But Kentucky Fried Movie, succeeded because it was fresh. The comedy was fresh. It was funny, and it had
Yes.
right in the middle of it. It had the fistful of yen, which was, if you watch that today, it's a forerunner of Airplane. It was absolutely a parody
Yeah.
of Bruce Lee's movie Enter the Dragon, and we did beat for beat Enter the Dragon. So and that really worked, and that ought to have been proof that Airplane would work. But still, we had the script. It was turned down by every studio until Michael Eisner found the script and called. Um, I can't give Michael Eisner enough credit because every other one of these guys just they didn't see it. And whatever Michael Eisner saw, he may have thought, oh, this is Animal House on an airplane. But I
Right.
think whatever he saw, he did get it. And then, as I say, they made the script better. It was unbelievable that a studio could be that good, all those years ago. And then
Wow.
the modern day incarnation is just awful.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Yeah.
all those people who turned it down are like the didn't quite get what the Beatles. They were like, I'm not sure about these Beatles guys. They're probably not going
Right.
to
It's
make it.
you hear that. And I think the Beatles were turned down by Decca or something, or
I think so.
I
Yeah.
don't know where they ended up, but they were
A
just
lot.
turned down. So I'm not surprised. And it's the
It's mad.
Paramount executives turned us down for Naked Gun 4. But, that movie, I just think, it'll eventually be made. So, and then, but they'll have long been fired, these, mediocre executives who,
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's
And
I just keep saying that's Hollywood. So, but I've always found a way to get stuff done, and I'll get Star of Malta done independently, and same for Counterintelligence.
so Star of Malta and Counterintelligence, is that do you see an evolution in the parody style that you're using within those scripts? I watch things on TV or on YouTube now, mainly like Tim Heidecker does a really good like hack comedians parody, and Kyle Mooney did the 80s TV spoof Saturday morning all-star hits. Like, I see little bits of really well observed in the moment parody that work really, really well. Where do you see it going, either within your work or other people's work? How do you see the evolution of parody? Is it just a case of being able to tap in to what's going on now, or is there more to it than that?
There's a lot more to it. I'll give you an example. So our Counterintelligence / Naked Gun 4, if that gets produced, it will represent just, doing our style of parody spoof correctly. I mean, as opposed to, Naked Gun 4.
Mm-hmm.
Star of Malta is a total evolution. That's it's as different for me, doing that movie and that humor as Annie Hall was from Bananas. So, when Woody Allen did Annie Hall, that was, oh my God, there was something new there. It was he did an evolution. And then, then he did Manhattan and a couple other, which I think he didn't really totally complete that evolution until he did Annie Hall. But then he did like an incredible movie. What was it? Crimes and Misdemeanors. I mean, totally not a comedy.
Totally different. Yeah.
And so, and I admire Woody because he kept evolving. He kept changing. He's really one of the few people I really look up to, and always have. And, I had the pleasure of meeting him many years ago. I was doing press for Naked Gun 33 1/3 and had in New York, and I met him, and we did chat for about 20 minutes, and he loved Airplane. I wanted to just gush and tell him how much I loved his movies, but he kind of brushed that aside and wanted to talk about Airplanes. So that's fine.
Wow.
It was, I'll never forget it. Yeah. But, in terms of evolution, Woody is a true artist, and he didn't succeed every time, but he always tried to, or I don't know if he's still making movies, but he always tries to do something new. And that's what I want to do. I don't want to do the old LA gumshoe cop station. Even in Star of Malta, it's film noir, but it's not femme fatale goes into the LA, gumshoes detective office saying that her husband was murdered, something, that's what they did in Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. And I'm kind of using that as an example of what I'm not doing. This is a complete evolution of spoof. It's on a whole different level.
I imagine sometimes you can get enamored with the things that you love. So if you're making, like, the Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid always made me think of people who absolutely loved that genre of film, rather than trying to make it was good, but it wasn't.
Yeah, on many levels, it was funny and succeeded. And because I'm teaching this course, and I wanted to use it as an example of, one of our rules that Jerry and Jim and I said was merely clever. It's not enough to be merely clever. You have to make the joke. And some of Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid was merely clever, and I don't want to take away from how funny many of the jokes were. So, Steve Martin plays a scene with Humphrey Bogart, and he plays a scene with Betty Davis, and those things but they had some great jokes in them. It was clever, and it also told the audience, don't take this movie seriously. We're not grounding this in reality. So, and it's another rule. It's like nobody knows this stuff, particularly college professors, but it gets so detailed, and that's why Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. It wasn't a monster hit. It was. I think it did okay, but I will show that movie to our the production designer, to the DP, as what I don't want to do. So I mean, I don't want to criticize it.
No,
but
I know what you're saying though. Yeah.
I want to make Star Malta into a movie that absolutely, you look at it and there's no difference from 1949. It's not like an SNL parody of.
Yeah,
It's
not like a nod and a wink.
Yeah.
I know. That makes sense. So going back to what I was saying about Woody Allen, trying things. So, I think one of the first things I saw was like What's Up, Tiger Lily, and Play It Again, Sam. Which, there's some real wild conceits in those films, but like you just said, yes, they are clever, but they're also ridiculously funny as well. And those two things, that's really, really hard to do.
I saw the what was the thing he did on Play It Again, Sam.
Play Again, Sam.
I saw that movie before I had seen Casablanca, and I still thought it was incredibly wonderful.
Yeah, actually, I had too. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So, and the best parodies you can see. I mean, no one ever saw Zero Hour, but enough. There was enough there so you could still follow the plot, even though you hadn't seen that before. It carries with it its own setups. So, I love Play It Again, Sam.
Yeah. So, do you think just to kind of tie a bow in that with like today's masterclass students, and so it does it in terms of the genres and whether it's superhero films or true crime documentaries or influencers or whatever it is, it's clearly not the genre that they're spoofing, it's the way they spoof it that matters, would you say?
Well, who are you talking about?
So like future, if you're kind of guiding some of your students and they're saying, I don't know what I want to spoof. I don't know, what to
it's only
target.
Start with a kernel of an idea. And in Police Squad, we started out with a TV show called M Squad with Lee Marvin. And then we did Police Squad. And then from Police Squad, we figured out how to do a movie of it, actually getting into Frank Drebin's character, giving him a love story and everything. So I would still say more important than spoofing any one movie is your story. And, Detour is very sketchy of a movie to base a whole thing on. But we added to it. We used 10 movies and put together a plot, and it makes sense. And in any plot, in any movie, you need logic. You can't have the character doing something where the audience says, "Oh, why would he do that?" It's like then you lose your audience. So we have to be very careful making everything logical. And that's something I learned from Sidney Pollack. Jerry and I had a meeting with him 20 years ago, and he said, logic is the most important thing. So, there's all sorts of cool stuff
that's someone to take advice from, definitely. Yeah, wow.
But you never know where comedy is going to come from. The best comedy now is not in movies. No one's doing movies. I mean, you have crap like Naked Gun 4. So the best comedy is being done on TV. There's South Park. Those guys are tremendously brilliant, and they've made $1 billion, and more power to them. and
Yeah.
and the Impractical Jokers make me laugh, much more than anything that I go to a theater to see. So people will have to
Yeah.
wait till Star Mall to actually laugh in a theater.
I can't wait to see it, and like I say, I hope this has enthused people to check out mastercrashschool.com, which is beneath me on the screen there. I hope I can ask for one little indulgence before I let you escape my clutches, if that's okay.
Well, we'll see what it is.
We'll see what it is. That's the right answer. Some quick fire, like geeky fan questions before we finish. Is that okay?
Sure. Okay.
All right. So, my favorite character, as you may have guessed earlier on, was played by Steven Stucker, Johnny from Airplane. If you had to say one of your favorite characters from your films, what would be your favorite character?
Well, I think the low-hanging fruit is Leslie Nielsen. I also loved working with Charlie Sheen. He was just a great character, and of course Steven was amazing. And Steven Stucker was the piano player in our live stage show on Pico Boulevard in LA, and he was singularly brilliant and could entertain an audience all by himself. We were on stage with him, but we were invisible when he was on stage. And so when it came time to write his lines for him, for Airplane, like for instance the press conference, we called him up on the phone and we said, "Okay, Steve, your character is going to be answering questions. We'll give you the questions." So we said, "What kind of a plane is it?" And what Steven said, just right in instant, "Oh, it's a big, pretty white plane with wheels and red stripes. It looks like a big Tylenol." So that is exactly what you see in the movie. We just wrote stuff down, and also,
wow,
the Black Jive guys in Airplane were great characters, and they wrote their own dialogue. We didn't write it.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Just wonderful moment.
Yeah.
So I guess the energy of that character of of the actor, I suppose, that as well. Just blew me away as a kid.
And he's in a movie full of straight stiffs. He was dropped in the second half and was he was what the movie ran on for the whole second half.
Yeah. Man. Oh. So I could just. I will do the question. This quick question again, a bit of a geeky fan question. So on Police Squad, Robert Vool did some script editing and writing on there as well. Obviously, I've seen him as an actor and go in a different direction. I was just really interested in his part in Police Squad, because it was a name that I was like, oh,
wait a minute,
by surprise.
Oh, Robert Wool?
Yeah.
He was a writer on Police Squad. One of 6 writers we had on Police Squad, and he was great. But I don't remember too much more about it. Pat Proft was the head writer, and he wrote a ton of stuff for Police Squad, and made sure everything was working, and then later wrote all the Naked Guns with me.
Yeah, because I imagine does it get harder when it's a team then? Like when you've got a bigger team of people, or you naturally find people with the same sensibility?
No, I mean, the more the merrier. I wrote the first Naked Gun with Jim, Jerry, and Pat. There were 4 of us. And then for the rest of and then it actually, after the first draft that the 4 of us wrote, then I wrote the next 10 drafts on the set. You're constantly rewriting. And then for Naked Gun 2 and 3, it was Pat and me writing it.
Right, got you. So I'm just kind of interested in that. Honestly, I will wrap up and I'll let you go now, very soon. I was just, did you ever get kind of attached to certain lines? So, for example, I mentioned before that roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, I'm going to break your face. The kind of the Muhammad Ali spoof with the boxer in Police Squad, or I need to go before I get run out like a common pygmy, things like that. Was one person fighting for that pygmy line? You know, was it?
That was a great line. I mean, those were things that were thought up by Jim and Jerry and me, and we just run out of time like a common pygmy was probably Jim. You know, that's because Jim would say the oddest lines, and that was that thing was a great run. And also when they questioned the bank teller, and it was a Who's on First. It was a wonderful Who's on First parody.
Yeah, and it goes on a while. That one. Yeah,
it still works. Yeah, it still works.
But you didn't have a fight over ones that were like had David attached to them or had Jerry attached to them, or you know, like.
Well, actually, we never. Lose. Well, you know, the interesting thing is we never put a value on who thought of what. There's a few gags which I can remember that maybe Jerry thought up, Jim, but you know, we never put any value on taking credit for any gags. So what happened was that we actually forgot who wrote what. Like, you know, the most famous lines, like "Don't call me Shirley." I don't remember who wrote that. It was one of the three of us. Yeah, but we don't remember. But that's one of the secrets to a successful collaboration is you know, not taking credit for anything. Because then if you take credit for it, you'll start to, you know, defend your stuff not on the basis of how good it is, but it's one of my jokes. So we never did, and we didn't set about to do that on purpose, or you know, it wasn't by design. It just happened. We so much wanted the movies to succeed that we really didn't care about it.
Wow, that is such a wonderful message for us to finish on, because I see the same thing in education. You know, I always felt like the moment we started competing with each other, or people started competing with each other, we lost why we were doing it. We lost the idea that if I can build you up, then we'll both be really good. If I can add you into my team and make my team better, then we'll be even more successful. This idea
it was all it's all focused on doing a great movie. So, you know, and I think, you know, Naked Gun 4 was focused on making money, I guess. You know, I don't think the real intention was making a great movie. If that was their intention at the start, they would have had me do it. But that's how.
Just to say a huge thank you. Well, thank you for everything. Thanks for informing my sense of humor. Some people might, you know, take you to task for that. Actually,
you needed to be informed.
I did. I started off.
Yes, I think you're better off from this, you know, as a result of this interview. I'm glad that I could do that for you.
Oh well. Yeah, thank you. It was very, very, very humble of you to say so. There's only one thing we can do to finish this, I think, in the perfect Zaz way, which is I'm going to hold up my mug, and I wonder if you could join me where we could just freeze as we finish. Have you got a drink there?
Okay, good idea.
Well, everyone, let me get centered here. The deep, that's all, folks. Just to once again say thank you to David and to his wonderful representatives for making this happen. I'll just give you a little update of everything that's coming up with Mr. Zucker. So, Master Crash, you can see the website is beneath us there. The Stunt List has currently created a tribute to David honoring his past, present, and future. I'll put the link to that there for you. His book, Surely You Can't Be Serious, The True Story of Airplane, is available. There's a link there as well. Also, his book, Before the Invention of Smiling, which is all about his family, and from horse and buggy all the way through to indoor plumbing, which is a great book to read. That's available on Amazon and other good bookshops. His newest film, Star of Malta, which is in early pre-production at the moment and sounds like it's growing great guns. Airplane, the unreleased director's cut screening and Q&A. He just finished on October the 3rd in Seattle. He will now be having one up on coming up on Sunday, November the 2nd in Denver at 7 p.m. and in Texas on the 5th of November, Bonfire Night, and again in Austin, Texas, on the 6th, and Sugarland, Texas, on the 7th. So if you just check out airplanelivetour.com, and you can watch the trailer to Airplane. I've put that on there as well. If you've never heard of Airplane, why are you watching my video when you could be watching Airplane? The website, mastercrash.com, at Mastercrash Comedy on YouTube, at the David Zucker, Zucker, on Facebook and Instagram, and the same on X, I believe they call it now. Thank you so much. And much like the great line, which I believe was a Jim Abrams line, I need to go before I get run from town like a common pygmy. So I'll see you. Good night, everybody.
So, and you can put the theme music on after that. Da-da-da-da-da.
Yes.